It is Wednesday, April 16th, and we're going to talk about and tap for how we can tell if we're getting our own way when we are tapping and how to get the most out of each round of tapping after we figure that out. Welcome to Wednesdays with Gene. I am the eponymous Gene Montrestelli. Every Wednesday, we show up here at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on YouTube, do a little live streaming to talk about how you can get more out of tapping every single time you sit down to engage with the tool set. It is sponsored by the Tapping Mastery Academy. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time talking about and tapping for how we can tell if we are getting in our own way when we are navigating our way through all of that. But as always, the thing that we always like to do to set the table is we like to take about 90 seconds, do a little wordless tapping to make ourselves calm, put ourselves in our body. So just move from tapping point to tapping point, take a nice big deep breath. And for the next 90 seconds, just let your fingers do the walking. And just notice what happens in your system as you tap. Nice big stretch. Oh, shake it off. Feel it in your body. Feel free to have a little sip of water. Thanks to those of you who've checked in the chat box from Oregon, North Carolina, Berlin, Wyoming, wherever you are in the world. I'm glad you're with us today as we work our way through this. Before we jump in, talk about the content, just want to give you a quick heads up of everything that is coming down the pike. For those of you in the Tapping Mastery Academy, we are back here on Friday for office hours. Make sure you keep an eye on your inbox. Starting next Monday, we are doing our 5 a.m. Action Club. No, you don't have to get up at 5 a.m. We actually do the tapping every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time live. You get recordings of all of that. But the reason why it's called the 5 a.m. Action Club is because typically that's when I start my day of tapping to set myself up for success, to take action. And so basically over the course of a number of weeks, I teach you everything that I do to start my day and how you can do the exact same thing. Clear resistance, take action, move through the world in that particular way. Next Wednesday the 23rd, we are back here again. We're going to talk about how to tap to end your day. A bunch of really easy things. The end of your day professionally, the end of your day before you go into bed. We're going to talk about both of those things because they are different. And then next Thursday at 2:30 Eastern Time, I'm actually running a practitioner's master's class. It's called How to Turn Your Healing Gifts into a Private Practice You Love Without Posting Every Day, Chasing Every Tactic, and Becoming Someone You Are Not. I can't wait to share that. I've been working on that for a number of weeks. You can find all of the details on all of the events that are coming up if you go to tappingqa.com/events. That will take you to a calendar of everything that's going on with links to connect to all of those things. If you'd like to join us in the Tapping Mastery Academy, tappingqna.com/TMA for the Tapping Mastery Academy. And if you'd like to join us next Thursday for that free masterclass, all you need to do is go to tappingqna.com/PMC for Practitioner Masterclass. I'm going to be sharing 3 really, really vital things that I think everybody should know when they are engaging with trying to make a living, sharing this amazing gift that we call tapping. Okay, so with that being said, let's talk about how do you know if you are sabotaging yourself and sabotaging your tapping practice? And the difficult thing is it's really, really hard to tell. Because you could consciously be in a circumstance where you are using the tool set, you're engaged with it, and if I'm taking action, it's hard to tell if I'm getting in my own way. Because if I'm taking action, I am taking action. Now, I might be in a circumstance where I'm not getting the results that I want, but when I'm not getting the results that I want, it could be the tool, it could be the approach, it could be lots and lots of things. And so typically, when we're not getting the results that we want, we do one of 3 things. One is we keep doing the exact same thing we were doing. We thought it was useful before, we committed to it, and we've decided, well, I just haven't done it long enough. Number 2 is we change the tactic that we are using. It hasn't been working before, I'm going to try something new. Number 3 is we either consciously or subconsciously give up or just wander away from what is going on. And so inside of that, like it's either I'm doing the same thing or I'm looking for new tools or I'm stopping. And all 3 of those typically do not have a sense of self-reflection to see how we are getting in our own ways. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about 5 ways or 5 things to notice in your own tapping. And as you notice those things, you might recognize, oh, I am part of the problem. And by part of the problem, I just mean you're not doing things as effectively. This isn't a blame. This isn't a shame. But if we're going to solve the problems, so we're getting more out of our tapping, we want to make sure that we're solving the right problem. If I am resisting success, it doesn't matter if I use tool A, tool B, tool C, if I tap in the morning, if I tap in the evening, because there's a part of me that's going to hold me back from success. So here are 5 really, really, really simple lenses that you can look through to figure out and see if this is happening to you as you navigate your way through all of this. So number 1, if when you sit down to tap, you are not going back to the beginning and checking in to see where you started. So oftentimes what happens when we are tapping is we are tapping, and we feel a sense of relief, and that's awesome because that's the reason why we're tapping, is we're trying to get relief. But just because I experience relief, it doesn't mean that I've experienced all of the relief that is possible for me today or all of the relief that is possible for me. And if I stop, then I only get a certain percentage of the way, which means by me choosing to stop, I am sabotaging the success because I'm not going as far as I could go. And so for me, the way that I make sure this is the case is like I said, is I go back to the beginning. So when I'm tapping with a client and we do a round of tapping, my favorite question to ask a client after we do a round of tapping is, what did you notice? And the reason why I love this as a question, for those of you who are helpers, for those of you who are practitioners, is I am not putting my finger on the scale. I am not impacting, influencing. I'm not leading the witness by saying, what do you notice is the relief? Or what's the part that's still hanging around? But by simply saying, what do you notice? I give them the opportunity to say whatever they've experienced, which might not be about release or let go. It might be a new idea. It might be something coming up. And so after, and I do this for myself, I ask myself the question, what did you notice? Then what happens is I am now in a situation where once I have that sense of notice, the first thing I notice is the release. And so when I have a client who says, oh, I noticed the release, the follow-up question is, Awesome. That's great. Now, what I would like you to do is I would like you to go back to the beginning and tune in and see what is still hanging around. Because what that does is that forces us to re-engage and think about the parts that are still there. And if I go back to the beginning and I think about the parts that are still there, what this does is it puts me into a position where I am tuning back into the issue, which means if I tune back into the issue, I'm going to notice something else that is still hanging out there. And when I notice something else that is still hanging out there, I'm going to keep tapping. Because if I'm in a circumstance where if I just go, that feels better and I move on, I'm short-circuiting my opportunity to do more work. So one of the biggest ways that I can sabotage myself and my tapping success is I stop too soon. I end a session too soon. I chase an issue too soon just because I've noticed some relief. So number one, go back to the beginning. Recognize the fact that if I retune into what is going on, it's going to make it so much easier for me to keep going. Way number two that we can get in our own way when we are tapping is we are not honest with ourselves with what is going on. It's really interesting that when I'm working with a client and I'll say, what's going on? Well, I'm sad. What are you sad about? And then as they start to describe the sadness and what they're experiencing and why they're sad, I can actually see on their face, I can actually read these moments where they are having new insight about their own lived experience. Where it's like, oh yeah. Man, I don't know if you've ever been in this circumstance where you're retelling a story about a customer service experience or something that didn't go your way. And as you're recounting the story to your friend, to your loved one, you start getting angrier and angrier and angrier as you're telling the story. Because you're frustrated about what is going on, but as you start to notice the details, they start bubbling up again, and they start bubbling up again, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when I'm working with a client, it's really super easy to hold them accountable to giving me as much detail as possible and getting them to tune in by simply asking follow-up questions. We are significantly less good in asking ourselves follow-up questions because we are inside the house. We have the information. We believe we understand what is going on. And so for me, a big stumbling block to getting the most out of tapping is being in a circumstance where I am not being honest with myself. I'm not doing a deep dive into what is going on emotionally inside of me. And so as we are tapping and as things come up, I will say, and one more detail is, and one more thing I notice is, and one more detail is, and I don't just stop there, but I then let myself fill in the blank. One more neat detail is, oh, this is really overwhelming. One more thing I notice is, oh, I've been dealing with this for so long. One more detail is, and so by looping back and doing that over and over again, what it does is it helps me to go deeper. You know, we know that we don't have to be specific when we're tapping. We want to be as specific as possible. And by continuing to ask myself follow-up questions in that particular vein, what it does is it helps me to be as specific as possible. So, problem number two is we don't go deep enough when we are doing work. Problem number three is we are not thinking about and we are not focusing on secondary gain. And so what secondary gain is, if you're not used to this particular idea, secondary gain is the benefit I receive from the problem that I am experiencing. So for example, if I'm in a circumstance where I am injured and I'm receiving every single week or a couple times a month or once a month a disability check, which is supporting me, there's a part of me that goes, if I heal, then I'm going to lose this financial support. Years and years ago, I was working with a client on weight release, and she had this amazing moment of insight. She said, I've heard how all of my friends talk about skinny people, and if I lose weight, they're going to talk about me in the exact same way. The same thing can happen around financial success. If I'm financially successful, people are going to beg me and people are going to want more money from me. And so, if we are not leaning directly into understanding the secondary gain of the problem, then we're going to make sure we don't solve the problem. So the very, very simple way to do that is I tune into the issue and I just say to myself, the drawback to solving this problem is, and I just let the subconscious mind fill that in. The big problem that I'm having if I solve this problem is, the thing I will lose if I solve this problem is, my life will be harder if I solve this problem because. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to find all of the subconscious negative reasons for me being successful. If you are in a situation where it is dangerous for you to be successful, if it is painful for you to be successful, you're going to make sure you don't sit down and do the work. And so for me, it's super, super important to tune in and recognize secondary gain might be an issue, and I need to ask really specific questions about that. Number 4, we don't make our transformation a non-negotiable, or we don't have a clear plan for our transformational work. If I'm in a circumstance where at the beginning of the week, it's like, oh, I need to tap on this week, that for me is not a strong enough and clear enough commitment to actually find my way to do it. If I am only doing the deep work I need for transformation when it feels safe, when it feels comfortable, when I have time, I am going to do it significantly less often than I would like. Because, and this is just vocabulary for me, you don't have to use this exact vocabulary. But for me, there is a difference between important and essential. Like, it's easy to tell the difference between the things that are important and the things that are unimportant. Doesn't mean I do the important things, but it's super, super easy for me to tell the difference between the unimportant things, or the important things, unimportant and the important things. What's different is the important and the essential. And typically what happens for me is the things that are important are the things that have deadlines associated with them. For example, I talked about the webinar that I'm doing next Thursday. And in order for that webinar to happen, an email had to go out, or emails had to go out to invite people to the webinar. The opt-in page had to be sent up so you could get the information from Zoom and be able to join us live. I need to make slides and do all of the things to make that happen. All of those details are important because there's a deadline associated with them. Then there are the things that are essential. My physical health, my spiritual practice, my transformation of my emotional self into something that is healthier. Well, those things don't have deadlines to them. And so, as I am starting my day and I look at this long to-do list, it's really easy for me to think, I'll tap later today, I'll tap tomorrow, because these things need to be done today. And so if I treat my tapping practice as something that is essential, but I don't treat it in the exact same way as I treat the things that are important, even though essential is more valuable than important, the important is going to win, the important is going to win, the important is going to win, because there's a deadline associated typically to those important things. And so, if you are only thinking about your trapping practice as something that is essential and not something that is important, where it has a time and a place and something tied to it, and it doesn't mean that you have to say at 11:42 and 26 seconds after the hour, I'm going to sit down and tap next Thursday. Like, it doesn't have to be that precise. But for me, I have really specific times scheduled into my week where I'm doing the deep transformational work, not the emotional response, not the get stuff done on my to-do list, but like the deep work that I need to do to heal as a human so I can live a more authentic life. And Tuesday after work and Saturday afternoon are times every single week where I find and I've carved out space for me to do that particular work. So if you're not in a situation where you're making this stuff essential, it's really easy for you to miss out on it and not do it as much as you would like. And then number 4, the thing that is super, super valuable to make sure that we are not sabotaging ourselves, that dovetails onto what we talked about, is to be tracking your progress, tapping your work. Because if I am tracking what is happening, I am much more likely to notice the progress. If I'm tracking what is happening, I am much more likely to notice the things that are not working. And so by putting myself into a position where I am doing that, it's so much easier for me to be successful when I have a plan. It's so much easier for me when I have little boxes to cross off and gold stars to give myself as I engage with whatever is in front of me. So, like I said at the beginning, it's difficult to tell, unless we're super distracted and we know we're being super distracted, whether or not we are sabotaging our success with tapping because we're engaging with the tapping. And I'm engaging with it, so it should be doing its job. So 5 things to keep an eye out for. Number 1. When you're doing something, making sure that you don't quit too early by going all the way back to the beginning. Number 2, making sure you're putting yourself in a circumstance where you are giving yourself the opportunity and you're holding the space to allow yourself to be more honest with yourself about the work that you're doing and what you're feeling to make sure that you are going deep enough. Number 3, make sure you are spending some time checking in to see if secondary gain is there. Ask yourself the questions. Is it dangerous for me to heal? Because if it is, you are going to sabotage yourself. Number 4, make sure you don't just think of transformation as something that is essential, but do it in a way, for me calling it important, do it the way that works for you. We're carving out space to make sure that you are engaging with it. And finally, put yourself in a circumstance where you're tracking your work, because if you're tracking your work and you see yourself moving forward, you're much more likely to do it. As you know, we got a free tracker for you. Just go to tappingtracker.com. It's a super, super easy way to do that. So those are 5 things for you to keep in mind. If you want to engage with those, don't try and do all 5 of them at once. The next time you sit down to tap, just pick one of them. Pick, I'm going to be more honest with myself, or I'm going to ask about secondary gain, or I'm going to make sure I come back to the beginning, or I'm going to make sure I get it on my calendar at a really specific time. And by doing them one at a time, what you're going to do is you're going to find that the work is more valuable because you're doing it more often, you're doing it longer, you're doing it in a deeper way, which is going to make it super, super, super easy for you to come back to tap again and come back to tap again and come back to tap again. So those are the 5 ideas that make it super, super easy for you. Before we head out the door today, a couple quick notes. Tapping Q&A podcast, episode 658 is going live in about 30 minutes. We're doing a lot of tapping this week on how do you tap for stress that never ends, a to-do list that keeps refilling. Next week, live right here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to talk about how you can tap to end your day more effectively. And again, we're going to do that in 2 ways. One is, how do we shut down and release the stress that we are carrying from the day? And number 2, how do we set ourselves up for a gentle night rest? I got some really fun tools that I want to share with you. And then number 3, next Thursday, a week from Thursday, 8 days from today, at 2:30 Eastern Time, I'm going to be doing a masterclass on how you can take the gifts of a healer and turn it into a practice that you love. I'm going to be sharing 3 super, super valuable things that I wish I would have known very early on in my practice. I would have saved so much time and so many headaches. I can't wait to share all of that with you. So with that being said, thanks for hanging out with us. Again, these, after they are done, go into the archive on YouTube so you can go back and you can rewatch this again and again and again if you want to take notes on the 5 things that we talked about, or if you want to go back to any of our previous episodes. This is actually episode 18. We have been doing these every Wednesday for over 4 months now, and we're just going to keep doing that going forward in the future. Make sure you invite a friend of yours along to join us next week. As I always say, our marketing budget is your word of mouth, and the highest compliment you can pay me and my work is to invite someone else along to join us. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you got any questions, drop us a note at support@tappingqna.com. If you're watching the replay after the fact, right now on the screen, you will be able to see a playlist of everything that we have covered on these lives so far. I look forward to talking with you and tapping with you again next Wednesday. Have a great day, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. Bye-bye.